with the quasi slap, you're saying that it's not a complete slap, and I'm assuming this would just be a slap of the tongue on the reed, or how is this executed exactly?
That's a loaded question, because it's because it's something that some people can really understand how to do it, but it's like you put the tongue under the reed, it's like you create a vacuum, and then you release the tongue while you don't have even to put to blow in the instrument to make that sound. So it's something that is merely, of course, there are various ways you can do it. You can also have like slap with sound or dry slap, but in this case I really just wanted to say, okay, this has to be a strong attack, just go for it, and it's a very strong attack, even because it's already a range in which it is, I won't say difficult, because of course professional saxophonists would play anything, especially, I don't know, I know many very good saxophone player that could do this piece like blindfolded, but the quasi slap is like, I'm actually going with the instrument limitation, so those are ranges in which it is difficult to play with a light attack, so I would rather go for it and have a very strong attack, because it have a more intentional feel to that, instead to have someone that tries to play mezzo forte, maybe not too much. I don't know, I think that was I was thinking. It was like, okay, those are very low notes, let's go for it, because they would sound strong anyway, so it's better to accentuate that idea rather than put in the middle way that would be, okay, maybe I have to play a little bit less, and maybe the note wouldn't sound right when the player wants to be. Of course, if you're a professional saxophonist, that's not a problem. So quasi slap is just for that, just to reinforce the idea of a strong attack.
Yeah, because you introduce accents here, and I'm assuming that's where the quasi slaps would be, and then you have these low B flats, the lowest note on the alto saxophone, performing these. So it's that's the thing I like about it. It's very intentional around the saxophone. It doesn't seem like you just wrote on the piano. I mean, although you say you wrote it on the piano, a lot of the things in the piece make it sound like you actually had a saxophone in your hand rather than improvising on the piano, which I think is very, very useful when writing, especially a soloistic piece like this.
Yes, that's why I wrote the piece. Even if I wrote on the piano, I didn't write the piece. Thinking about the transposition, so that B flat wasn't like a C sharp for me, but I actually play B flat because I was thinking with every saxophone I would play a B flat, and that was the quicker and easiest way for me to think about it, even if the sound was, of course, a minor sixth up on the piano, but I didn't care in that moment. It wasn't that kind of piece in which the key was a key. Was like a key element, so that's why even if I wrote on the piano, I would think about the fingerings on the saxophone and how would sound that note, the timbre of that note on the saxophone.
Yeah. I mean, you seem to have generated the ideas from those notes that you had, the sketches that you had earlier, and then you kind of say, okay, what of that makes most sense on a saxophone? So it's not like you went straight to this process. You had other things before that led you to this, which I think is helpful to know for people, because it makes it seem like that there is a process behind it, not just, okay, here we go, here's a really beautiful building, it just appeared here out of nowhere, or here's like a sculpture that's just there, or here's a fountain that's just there. There was things that were happening behind the scenes that made us get to this point, which I think is really interesting to see, that it also happens with the solo piece, not just you would think maybe with an orchestra piece or something, of course, there are steps. But even for a solo piece that's 6 minutes long, there are these steps that still have to be taken to get to this point. But like going on, I think that there are, I mean, just a lot of like really interesting sections. Like for example, this page here, we have these multiphonics, and for those that don't know, these multiphonics are basically sounds that take advantage of the several overtones on the saxophone at the same time, but you have to achieve them by with different fingerings. You can't just use the normal old fingerings for most of these multiphonics, right? So you have a series of them. You don't just have one. You have a series of them, and then you separate it with like the single pitch. Like, explain how this process came to be about.
Yes, you explained perfectly what multiphonics are. Essentially, but it's not only the fingerings. It also depends on the dynamic and on the embouchure. So it's a very peculiar situation that you have to create to make them work. So they are not some. They are. It's a technique that develops, and even with the same fingering, you can make sound one of these notes more than the others. But you shouldn't think about multiphonics as chords. It's more a different timbre per se. Even if they seem chords in my piece right now, for me in that moment, I wanted just to found, at least for the first stuff that you can see with multiphonics, I wanted to have 2 or 3 multiphonics with that had the same pitch, that C sharp, and that would work in a way in which that C sharp would connect from one multiphonic to the other. Of course, it's not something that is always achievable. If I am correct, the first person that played the first saxophonist that played the piece, Marco Russo, I think he chooses like different fingerings, but he had also a different saxophone from mine, like a different brand at all. So it was a different system, at least for the multiphonics, because they often aren't achievable with the same fingering on different saxophones. Sorry, the same fingering on different saxophones. So you have to change it up in some way. As I told him, my intention is to find a way to get that C sharp across these 3 multiphonics. And after that, so I have this long section in which there are actually only 2 multiphonics. Yeah, no, the same. The last 2, those 2.
These 2 lines here, but they're still around C sharp, just in the lower register.
Yes, yeah. I wanted to create like a drone with this C sharp and to create this effect. Those are pretty simple multiphonics, and they usually come out very very easily. So I didn't try to make the life hard to my saxophone, because I know how it is difficult, even because you are trying to because as someone that studied piece like that, and I wouldn't consider myself like a solo performer. Like, I'm not that much of a saxophonist. That's why also I didn't want to play this piece, because I didn't bother to play it actually. I mean, I knew that I could play maybe some passages to verify how it was, but I didn't even bother to study it from the beginning to the end, even because I mean I composed it. Why I had to play it? There are other people that can play it.
The other people that can play it better. Yeah, I mean that's how I feel.
That's for
even
sure.
You playing the saxophone, you feel that way, which is interesting to me.
So these multiphonics, as you said, are different pitches at the same time. It's more like they are different overtones of the same fundamental that alternate very quickly. It's more like that, because especially the stronger one, the one that you can play fortissimo, are very intense. Even without, they would sound the most intense multiphonic would sound like a growl, because it's a distortion of the sound in a way. More than a chord, it's more a distortion. It depends on the multiphonic that you choose.
Yeah, we had just finished with the section that you had this section before,
Yes.
which is all growling, but it's just single
Yes.
notes. And then you get to this chord here, or this multiphonic rather, and it's also going to sound like a growl too, but instead of a single note, this is going to be a multiphonic. So even like the transition between the different techniques is pretty seamless, because not only you have the pitch C sharp being the same between these two sections, but then you also
Yes.
have the timbre is similar, but then you're still making that change to having a drone. I mean, it's very effective. And when you get to that next line that you mentioned with this kind of like folk tune-ish thing going on around the C sharp, you know, it's also, I think it should be mentioned that these fingerings here that you outline, I mean, for any saxophone, even for someone that's not a saxophonist, you're just objectively looking at this fingering, you don't see much change between one fingering and the next. It's just lifting one finger, adding one finger, right? So
Yes.
it makes it even that much easier for the saxophonist to execute, right?
Yes, the fingering is very immediate and easy. The thing that you have to be careful is more the embouchure. So the way you blow in the saxophone, and the way everyone involved, tongue, lips, the shape of your mouth, etc., are set to produce the sound. So that's the more, I wouldn't say complicated, but the thing that the saxophonist has to be careful when
They
plays.
have to be aware. They have to be aware that they have to get those pitches. But it's like not just. But it's not something that you as a composer have to write necessarily. You indicate the pitches. You indicate the fingerings you think they should be. Like you said before, you put the fingering down, but it could be different on another saxophone. But at least you put that consideration. Oh, this is the fingering that I think it should be, and at least it gives the player an option, and at least it gives the player some kind of reasoning behind why you wrote the music that you did and how you wrote it, right?
Yeah, that was my intention. And actually this one are, and these two multiphonics that I use in the piano section should be more easily produced on any saxophones. The multiphonics that have lots of partials can be different. I think that's what I understood. Maybe I'm totally wrong, but this what I, at least in this piece, the multiphonics that the saxophonist had to change were the one with more partials, the stronger ones.
That first one, those first couple ones that you have there. Yeah.
As you can see, I've written like with the precise rhythm as far as possible, because I know that it's not that. I mean, those notes wouldn't change necessarily when you want. So I get it. I mean, I get it. So try to do it, but try to bear with me with the matter changes, even if more than one person told me. But isn't it just easier if I played in 4/4? Yeah, okay. Try because I have this thing in which I think about the arsi and tesi, upbeat and downbeat. So in my mind, it makes sense to start that E with in upbeat, then to put the other notes the way they are put. But probably that's not that interesting.
No, I see what you mean, because that E in this bar here could have easily been the downbeat.
Yeah.
If it wasn't in 9/8, if it was in, but you want that D sharp on the next bar to be kind of on a strong beat. Yeah, it makes sense.
Yes,
it makes sense. It's just
for me
strange because the everything before, there's no drastic meter changes like this. So you get to this section, and all of a sudden it's just shock, I guess, to the performer.
Yeah, there is no meter at all, I think. Yeah, it's just
like unmetered. Unmetered.
Yeah, unmetered.
Yeah, unmetered. Yeah, the whole piece is I don't even think you have a time signature in the beginning. Yeah, you don't. It's just completely unmetered.
No.
and then all of a sudden
I just
you have
put
this
some
section.
some bar lines here and there, but just to maybe sometimes there were errors, but most of the time to say, okay, this is a section, here it starts another section. So I think that the only places in which I put bar lines are at the end and the beginning of a section.
But I think it's interesting though, because you have this section here. When you hear it, it actually sounds extremely free compared to everything else. Sounds like it's very precisely written in a way, with all these triplet 16th notes and the dotted rhythms and things like that are very precise. But then you get to this section, and you know, if you don't see the score in front of you, you think it's like everything else, like very free without a meter. But then you look at the score, actually it's the exact opposite. To get that feeling of freedom, you need to have these like upbeats and these downbeats demarcated so that the performer can get the feeling that you want. So I find that kind of fascinating, that these kind of interpretations are happening from the score, and then when you hear it live, it's not that way at all about what you think.
I think that my mental process was, if I don't put something very structural, like something very structured, in talking about the meter, it would be easy to slip in a dragging way of playing, because there is some liberty, because some freedom, because of course you can wait until the multiphonic is forming before go ahead, but I didn't want to give too much freedom, because I didn't want that to be a dragging section, but more like a small improvisation on a drone. I don't know, it's something that I usually do, like every time I hear something. I don't know, even with the, how do you call it, brush teeth? Brush teeth? The electric brush teeth?
Like the tooth, like the electric
toothbrush. Sorry, what they call it?
Toothbrush.
Yeah, with the toothbrush. Yeah, you know, because it does this sound when you turn it on, and you can like humming. You say that? It seems like I'm talking about prosciutto.
Oh, yeah. So like when you have the toothbrush, but then you're humming something else while you're having the toothbrush in your mouth.
That was actually my idea, probably, because it's something that I used to do a lot. So it was like a melody for me. So the melody is, of course, the mi re diesis, so E, D sharp, etc. So these three notes essentially. E, D sharp, and C sharp. So when there is no multiphonic, the only note that remains is the C sharp. So the idea was to have this drone and this little melody over it, but I didn't want to be a very long and like dragged out melody.
Yeah, and it's only 3 pitches, and it outlines like a C sharp minor scale. Yeah. So you kind of have this little bit of quasi tonality in the middle of the piece that's otherwise, it doesn't have any obvious tonal elements, except for the next page, where you were mentioning earlier that you have a quotation from Jeff Buckley on the second system.
Yes,
and
exactly.
Like I'm looking at these pitches here: D flat, E natural, A flat. I mean, you have basically you're outlining you're basically outlining a triad in a way. But you would spell it probably D flat, F flat, A flat. Yeah. And then the next arpeggio you have E flat, D flat, G, B natural. Outlining like a 7th chord. So I mean, it's interesting how like these tonal elements start to come out of the texture, and then if you told me, okay, this is a Jeff Buckley, or even just like it's influenced by popular music. Okay, then I start to see it like towards in these moments, but otherwise it's difficult to tell what it's influenced by.
But perfect, because I didn't want to draw too much attention on it. In general, when I wrote it, I was trying to put in there like as a Easter egg, more than something that should be noticed when you hear the piece.
Yeah, and for me, this last page too, also not just the tonal thing, but the techniques also are packaged together in a concluding way, because you have like the subtones come back, right? You have the quasi slap comes back. You have like this quintuplet 16th note figure, which happens a lot in the beginning. It comes back.
Yes.
And the triplet figures come back. So you have all these things that start to come back, and also the range, the high Bs, like basically the high range of the saxophone coupled with the low range of the saxophone on the same page, which is not usual in this piece. When the high notes come, it usually kind of stays high for a while, and then when the low notes come, the same thing. But then you have this last bit here, this plus, I don't know what it says, plus minus 6. What does this mean on these last concluding passage here?
No, it's just so the initial idea was just to use the key, use the sound of the key without blowing the instrument. So just key noise. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't come to my mind the word noise. So that was the initial intention. But I've had so the first, how do you call it? The first performance. Yeah, the first performance was made like that. So with key noise. In the recording, we decided to actually play the note, but like very, very, very softly. But it's up to the performer. I mean, the initial idea and what is written in the edited part, that is, how do you say, in vendita?
The published part? The
published, thank you.
Part?
Yeah, the published part
part,
is, it is the one that you have in front of you. And plus, less, it means like to use the sixth and to release the sixth. So it's to have this boop with the key sound.
Okay.
So like
I see. Okay.
Push and I don't know, push and pull. No.
Yeah. So it has like this, and you don't need to use air from your mouth to make the sound. It's just the sound is generated by just this push of the keys down there.
Yes. I don't remember the pitch. Sorry, if you can go a little bit. Yeah, it's a bit flat. So yeah, essentially you have all the instrument covered. So all the keys are pushed. All the instrument is closed. If you raise and push a key, you can have a sound. It can be loud if you do it like quickly. It can be very loud, but it would be a different sound if you would do the same thing, starting with a different, not with a B flat, but from a C, for example, that you just have to take out another finger. It would be a different sound. So actually, probably that was the sound that I liked on my saxophone, pretty sure. And I said, okay, that's cool. I want this pitch. Probably something in that zone, like a ghost sound on of the key around C or B flat, probably.
Yeah, and it just ends kind of very softly in that way, even though these are, literally kind of pushing the keys in a very kind of intentional way to get a sort of sound. You still end mezzo piano, piano, and then pianissimo.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, great. Thank you, Alberto, very much for sharing this piece and sharing all the different things that went behind it, because I think it's interesting to see how it started and then how it ended in terms of the process, and then also using all these different extended techniques in a way that actually evokes what you're trying to say, rather than just kind of having them interspersed just for the sake of it on the saxophone.
Yes, thank you for asking and for being interested in it. It was a pleasure.